The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome, everybody, to the Marketing with Purpose series of the Bliss Business Podcast, where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes really beyond just the numbers. I'm Mike Liskey, and in each of these episodes, we sit down with marketing experts to explore their leadership approach, their strategies that are really driving performance, but most importantly, really are resonating with audiences. And together we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and the topics that we really love to talk about, how purpose and empathy transform the ways that brands today are really connecting with people. So let's jump in. Today, I'm joined by Jennifer Sullivan. She is the Fractional Chief Growth Officer at Hollywood Dialect Coach. Jennifer brings with her 2 decades of experience driving profitable growth and transformation across a number of verticals: finance, SaaS, entertainment, media, and technology. Known for her really rare combination of financial rigor, creative vision, and alignment with the executive leadership, she's really been able to prove in terms of being able to record of turning strategy into measurable results, which is a very unique combination in our business world today. At top 100 advisory and consulting firm, Jennifer as well led initiatives that delivered 47% revenue growth and earned multiple national awards for best rebrand, client experience, and as well advertising campaign of the year, which we know is one of the hardest awards to win. So congratulations on that, Jennifer. And now at Hollywood Dialect Coach, she continues to apply her expertise in leveraging marketing and AI to uncover untapped opportunities and really help accelerate growth. Today, we're going to explore turning marketing into a revenue engine, which we know is a topic on many of our audience's mind. And so I'm super excited to dive in with you, Jennifer. Welcome to our show.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so, Jennifer, before we kind of dive into all things marketing, really wanted to sort of hear, why was turning marketing into a revenue engine the top, topic basically for, that you wanted to explore with us today?
Sure. Well, as you mentioned before, I started in finance as an analyst, and that really gave me an instinct for what metrics really matter. Thinking about the financial health of an organization, and then how data tells a story. And it was how that data tells a story really provided that foundation for me to decode, I would say, like the complexity within a business. But that storytelling was really what drove me to go into marketing. And in my roles, I like to think of marketing not just as something that's solving a problem, but I like to put myself in the shoes of a business owner and really understand what levers do I need to pull to ensure growth. And I think a lot of times marketing can sometimes be a dirty word. It's a cost center, and you have to really rewrite that narrative to understand and help business owners understand why it's so essential. And having that past experience, I'm able to speak their language a little more and help them understand that.
Yeah, for sure. And having, like, as you mentioned, having that data, having those KPIs early on as our goal. And, thankfully now we have so much data that we're able to actually prove out, as you said, the work that we're doing.
Yep.
One of the challenges that, many CMOs face, right, is they get pulled between, hey, I need kind of near-term, short-term campaign results, and then, building a brand long-term. So how is it that you've been able to ensure that marketing strategy really stays aligned with the company's growth goals? And I guess, where have you found some of the biggest friction points in trying to make that long-term happen while still meeting those short-term needs?
Sure. And to just take a little bit of a step back, I think that as we know, there's many marketing budgets that are shrinking, but the expectations keep soaring, right? And so I think whether you're, a CMO or a VP or whatever level you're at within the organization, there's more accountability now for driving profitability. And so you can't always rely on soft metrics and brand awareness alone. And so I think that really goes into how are you showing those quick wins, but still at the same time having that brand building. And so just a few examples I think that really I have found to be helpful are showing that momentum. So thinking about it even from like a lead qualification standpoint and how you're routing in new business. And I'll get in, I can talk more about that intersection of marketing and sales.
Right.
Like, what are those behavioral signals that you're analyzing that helps the pipeline flow smoother? What is that competitive intelligence? And I think there's a lot you can do pretty easily now, looking at whether it's a co-pilot you're looking at for AI or actually an AI agent that can help with your marketing intelligence. And you can implement that and show, hey, this is efficiencies I can have. So therefore I can focus on these other deliverables to drive some big results. So that's kind of some of the shorter term strategy. I think the other piece a little bit about that bigger long-term goals is really making sure that you're curious. And that's like I have that in a Post-it, actually. It says, be curious. And really understanding from the individual stakeholders, meeting with other department heads, building those allies to really figure out and make sure you are in the know that you're staying aligned with the growth goals. Because you're going to have growth, you're going to have goals for marketing, but really, how is what you're doing impacting the overall growth of the company? And that's really important. And I can go into the friction points if you want to.
Sure.
But
absolutely.
Do you agree
we
with
know
that?
we know it's a very common, problem that we see.
Yeah. And I think some of the biggest friction points is that, alignment on goals. And so if you have different stakeholders, speaking that language of the leaders you're talking with, and really understanding their point of view, because you might be talking about specific engagement metrics, or, if you're having marketing qualified leads, or, think of any of the technical jargon, make sure you're translating that to what's important to them is really important. And then translating those business goals into the marketing objectives and thinking about it from not only just marketing ROI, but looking at conversion rate, customer acquisition costs, all of those metrics, and making sure you're aligned on them, because there might be, a lot of times people are going to have different goals and objectives. So sharing those common goals and just being really transparent about it is super important.
Yeah, just absolutely where we're going. But that's a great balance, right? Of being able to be curious, at the same time, not being stubborn, really listening to the data and make adjustments, perhaps where need be. Now, as CMOs, as business leaders, a lot of times we face some pretty high stake situations. Maybe, say a brand crisis, a market downturn. Many brands face similar situations during COVID. So how are you able to maintain kind of a sense of purpose and empathy while still, being able to make some pretty quick strategic decisions that might be necessary in, say, a crisis or, some kind of market downturn?
Yeah. And I've experienced that multiple times over my career. You think about going back to when the real estate bubble burst, all the way from, what we're experiencing right now in the marketplace. And I think what I go back to when I think about purpose and empathy is, especially with the teams you're leading, even just stating the reality of this situation and with people you're talking to, this is a challenging time, right? And being really upfront and saying, this isn't what it's going to be like forever, but this is how we need to act now and act quickly. And not everyone is going to agree or understand with the terms or the path that's being led. But I think it's really important just to be as clear and transparent as you can, and even acknowledge that, hey, this is hard for me too, especially with your team. It kind of brings that psychological safety with that, and saying, here's where I can get your input, but some areas I really have to just act quickly because I'm working with management and push these forward. And, I think that one thing I would do if I could go back and talk to myself under those times of extreme pressure is, don't work through the lunch and the breaks and power through so hard, because when you take a moment to pause, you really have that ability to come back and be even more agile and make better decisions. Yeah. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's so wise. When we're in the moment, it feels, so rushed, but, doing this thing in particular, many times will separate the winners from the losers. So very important to get that right. So now say you're launching a new product, I want to talk a little bit about alignment between, say, sales, product, and even the customer success team. So when you do launch a new product, or maybe you're entering a new market, what is an effective way that you've found, to create that kind of alignment?
Sure. And I think that goes back to some of those common goal settings and having a flexible playbook, right? What the playbook is, and doing pulse checks. And I'll get a little bit more specific. And I'll speak directly when I think about teams that are maybe 20 or less, because it's going to be maybe a little bit different how you approach it with different organizations. Yeah. But I think a big piece is understanding having those, whether it's monthly, whatever the cadence may be, those cross-functional revenue reviews is what I like to call them, and having incentive overlap with marketing, with sales, with customer success. And maybe that's around the fact that sales maybe is rewarded not just for closing a deal, but retaining a deal. What's that percentage? Because I've dealt with figuring out pricing structure, and also, when you're looking at specific pieces around compensation, and maybe there is, the customer success team is tied to renewal and expansion growth, but how are you tying in sales to that? And how are you tying in marketing to that? And even product OKRs, right? Looking at adoption and satisfaction metrics. So I think really having that where people are bought into the same metrics and everybody is motivated to all work together to achieve those really helps with that, trying to alleviate some of that breakdown.
Get everyone kind of moving in the same direction. I'm so glad to hear you mention OKRs, right? And having an objective, and then those key results that line up with that, because that's another, key to this success. Turning maybe to the topic of using customer feedback, right? Because as marketers, we love to hear from our customers, or even seeing behavioral data. How have you been able to use either customer feedback or behavioral data to shift the direction of, say, a campaign? What have you learned, I guess, from using some feedback and data?
Yeah. Well, I think of an experience that I had when I was overseeing a very large client experience initiative with an outside consulting company going in, soup to nuts, not just the client service, right, but all the way from every touch point we're having with our potential clients and our current clients.
This is big.
Yeah, a big one. And something that was so interesting is that the feedback that was given, that a significant number of our larger long-term clients were not aware of our newer service offerings, which was very interesting to us because we had seen metrics around people, how they had been clicking through the customer journey and how to get to information, and data was showing revenue expansion. There was positive cross-selling metrics. I mean, we even had case studies from various size companies that we worked with showing this. Well, through that live feedback, we actually, had sample sizes and getting live feedback. We found out that some of the journey was frustrating and it wasn't as intuitive to click through with some of our campaigns compared to, and that also goes to generations too. You're looking at people are going through succession planning. There's different generations clicking through. So how are we really serving everyone so they can really understand what we're offering? And there was a lot of frustration under that. And these people were big referral sources.
Wow.
So having them understand everything that the organization offered was not only a key to retention, but driving new business. And so uncovering that said, okay, how can we streamline some of our campaign processes, whether it's, drip campaigns, you name it, all of that marketing automation that we're doing. And then making sure also that we're having accurate data in our CRM and marketing automation. So we're having the right data and attributions. So I think that was really important.
Wow. That's a really good example of, for example, getting qualitative feedback and listening, to that, where maybe it may be contradicting, what some of the other data had been telling you. So that's a really good point. Listening, right?
Yeah, listening. And I think you have to be, my first reaction was like, what are you talking? As a marketer, you're like, what are you talking about? This is so intuitive. Right. But I think that comes back to, and it's not always easy, but taking the emotion out of it and going, okay, the customer, this is what they're experiencing. So this is the truth of what they're going through. So how can we address it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Jennifer, we've got a couple more topics I want to make sure we're able to get to. This one, I guess, is turning, more so, marketing, like we talked about a little bit earlier, into a revenue driver. So I'm really curious if we can dig into that a little bit more to what has actually worked best for turning marketing into that driver, and where have you, for example, even seen some gaps that maybe you haven't perhaps been able to achieve everything you'd wanted to in terms of it being a revenue driver?
Sure. So kind of what I said a little bit before of having those shared revenue targets,
right?
Which is also an important thing. And additionally, making sure, and depending on how big the organization is someone from marketing sitting in on some of these larger sales or customer success meetings? And it doesn't have to be the whole team and all of them, but what are those insights you're getting? And what is the cadence? Is it you're meeting with maybe the head? You can get reporting, but I think having that pulse check is super important of knowing what's going on in the field, and really understand that. And I also think that, hearing the objections and feedback directly from sales, it's so important to have that synergy there, and build that relationship. And I have specifically done that with marketers on my team and myself coming from having a sales background too, that's really important. And then some of the friction can go there is picking your source of truth, right? Because you can't track everything perfectly. So you have to also focus on the points that really matter. And so I think a lot of times thinking about opportunity creation, not just the lead creation, but when does something become a real actual opportunity, and having that be your key conversion event. And that might be different in different people's minds. So being really clear about how you're defining some of those metrics. And then also understanding that it is not just one point or one moment that's going to make that sale turn. So I think it's you could have that first touch source, right? And the campaigns that influenced it. But I think really trying to understand and how you're attributing that, and just having those positive affirmations to each other, and sometimes it's even team building between teams.
Right.
I'm a big,
Yeah.
I'm a big proponent
Yeah.
of, if you don't work together, it's not going to work. From
Yeah,
my
and you're on the same side of the table.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. You're with your colleagues.
Yeah.
You're with your team, and I think that's such a great point, right? Of marketing having a seat, at that table. One, to be able to provide input, but also be able to hear back on what is transpiring from the activities, and not being siloed.
Yep.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm curious, when it comes to building the teams that you've worked with, because it sounds like you've worked with different teams of different sizes. So what's your approach in developing the marketing talent so that they not only hit the performance goals, but that they also are able to stay inspired and engaged?
Sure. Originally, I was a big fan of SMART goals, but it just feels a little bit rigid. I'll say that. And so it just felt a little bit tight, especially now where I was actually reading an article about, with LLMs and how search is in the LLM. I mean, we all know this compared to what's going to the website, and how are we having to different metrics inside ChatGPT to really see what's being viewed. I think about everything's moving so fast. So at the same time, we need to also have fast goals. And so I call them fast goals, but looking at them, something that's frequently discussed, how are you having those stretch targets that are not only achievable, but some that may be a little bit longer term, those metrics and milestones, and then really being visible across the organization. I'm a firm believer that you're going to have your marketing acumen, that knowledge you're building, but then what else are you understanding about the business, right? What's moving the business forward? And I think it's really important to have those goals just from what it's like to have a good business strategy that's important, and that ongoing learning. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm so glad that you mentioned not only the SMART goals, but in a way, almost having, the soft goals, so that, someone's able to, still feel that they can innovate, right? That they can, take a chance and, again, have that sense of trust.
Yep.
Quick question for you then too, around, purpose and empathy. So when we think about, the role that marketing ends up playing in, say, the company's future, how do you feel about the role that purpose and empathy, should play, I guess, in trying to, create that genuine resonance?
Sure. I'll take that maybe just from two different perspectives. I think before, when I was working in-house compared to now when I'm doing some fractional work, I think about it when you're leading like a large team. It was really of that utmost importance, not only to align the marketing, sales, and CX to have that sustainable growth. And the focus was a lot on that end consumer. It's like you're not only providing that service, but what is that personal touch? And this is for more to B2B, but like that deeper relationship. And what does that look like going forward? Because how people are interacting obviously today is different than how they were yesterday, or, even, 10 years ago. It's been a huge
big shifts,
change that's been going on. And I think that having to approach that it's taking a step back, that it's not just, I mean, obviously the numbers are important, but really, really people want that human connection, and they want to have that emotion they're feeling from the brand that they're interacting with, and also want to make sure they're having that experience across the organization. So if I'm talking to my account manager, or I'm getting something from accounting or invoicing from finance, what is that experience like? And am I being treated in the way that I expect the brand to be treating me? And then for me, what I'm the most passionate about is working a lot with, more emerging growth and entrepreneurs, and also when talking about the realm of entertainment and media, empathy is even more connected and at the forefront. I mean, I think of marketing as a storyteller and the voice of the brand.
Mhm.
And it weaves a story that hopefully is evoking that emotion in the audience and either resonates or it doesn't, but that voice is a source of truth. So with the business I'm working with now, whether it's a business person that is speaking, if it's an actor or a singer or a presenter, it's about providing those techniques to support the person so they can not only optimize their voice, but then they can share their message, create art, and live, right? So it's someone's voice helps drive growth and expansion. And that's really what it's about. And so it's like that personal piece of making that art that shines a light on the transparency and mutual respect that you're creating within the community. So that's very exciting for me, working in the entertainment and media space.
I bet, right? Because it's how we're wired, and having that authenticity, that intimacy, that purpose is really important in connecting today, particularly as we look at some of the younger generations than myself. They're thirsting for that, and being able to find a brand that connects with their values. So Jennifer, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you as well to our listeners and to our followers for joining us today on this segment of the Bliss Business Podcast, the Marketing with Purpose series. And I hope today's conversation really sparked some new ideas for how you might be able to align strategy, execution, and purpose in your own work. And if you found the value in this discussion, please, like, subscribe, and share it with those to really keep this very important conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just sell; it serves. And we'll see you next time on the Marketing with Purpose series.